Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This is the public interest election program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. Our November 5th general election is coming up, and we will be voting for both state officials and federal officials. The deadline to register is Monday, October 21st. The League is interviewing candidates in contested races, those who wanted to be interviewed. And for each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them.
Hello, I'm Sue Ruth, a member of the League of Women Voters in Berks County. Two candidates are competing in the 13th Pennsylvania Senate District, Democrat Trex Proffitt and Republican Scott Martin. This district is mostly in Lancaster County, but includes the southern tip of Berks, including Brecknock and Robeson Township and New Morgan. State senators serve a 4-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and vote to create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They help constituents with issues regarding state government. The salary for a state senator is $106,422 per year, plus benefits and expenses. Please note, the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and not the opinions of the League of Women Voters or Berks Community Television. This interview is with Trex Proffitt. He is the challenger. Welcome, Mr. Proffitt.
Thank you, Sue. It's great to be with you today. Appreciate you having me.
Let's start by you telling our viewers about yourself and why you decided to run for this office.
Sure, Sue. So I'm a career educator. I was a business professor for 18 years, and in 2016 I switched to teaching middle school, which is a little more challenging. And I teach 7th and 8th grade U.S. history, English language arts, and math. And I'm doing this for the kids. When you think about why someone runs for office, sometimes it's for power, prestige, but in my case, I want to leave the world a better place for the students that I teach. So thanks for asking that.
You're welcome. What are the two most compelling issues on which, if you're elected, you feel you can make a difference?
Yeah, there are two really huge baskets of issues that a lot of topics fall under. One is protecting our civil rights and liberties, so I'll fight hard to protect abortion rights in this country by implementing measures at the state level that will ensure a woman's right to choose. In addition, a whole panoply of reproductive health rights also fall under that. And of course, your right to privacy, your right to be free from government interference in your private affairs, gender identity, who you marry, and so on. I think the second basket of issues that voters really want to hear progress on is the economy. We have a very prosperous economy, but it's not being evenly shared amongst all of the people of our Commonwealth. And I think I can do a better job at distributing that wealth than my opponent, who's in the back pocket of a billionaire, Pennsylvania's richest person.
Do you think Pennsylvania's elections are fair?
Yes, I have great confidence in the election system. It's a little archaic at times. We don't have some of the more modern techniques that are present in other states. But one of the things that we've done close analyses of over many, many elections is the degree to which they're susceptible to voter fraud. And that's been investigated very carefully, and I'm very confident that Pennsylvania can run a clean and fair election.
So you will support the results of the election as certified by the counties?
Absolutely, as I have in every other election in the last 20 years that I've been a Commonwealth resident.
And will you support the certified results at all levels of government?
Absolutely. I think we've had enough investigation of false claims and rumors. Let's put that to rest and run the election the way it's meant to be and honor the results of it.
So we know both parties say they are pro-family, but they propose and vote for very different things. What legislation do you feel is pro-family?
Okay, so If you think about the Pennsylvania budget, one of the biggest investments that we make in families is our investments in the education of our children. And so as an educator myself, I feel very passionately about ensuring that we have a fairly and fully funded K through 12 education. We also need to make higher education more affordable, and we need to take care of our preschoolers in preschool education as well, as best we can. Recently, we had a chance to fix the unconstitutionality in our education system, and I would have fully supported and voted for HB 2370, a bill that would have addressed historic, decades-old unfairness in the system. It was a $5.1 billion 7-year bill. And my opponent and his colleagues figured out a way to cut that back. So instead of 7 years, they wanted to negotiate every year, which is terrible for school systems. And in addition, they wanted to cut the first-year allocation by 2/3. So I feel like investing in education is the first and biggest way that we invest in our families. Of course, there are many more.
What specific ideas do you have to increase the supply and quality of affordable housing and to preserve existing affordable housing?
Sure. I think one of the issues that we are facing across the nation is a sudden appreciable shortage in housing, and people are recognizing it as a crisis, and I feel like we have to do something in Pennsylvania to address that. So as a business professor, I would never have said we don't involve business and economic development. Instead, what we have to do is make smarter deals. So we need to make housing that is suitable for all levels of income, household income, personal income. So when a developer builds, we want to incentivize as much as possible that developer can make housing at the entry level, at the mid level, and then of course if they would prefer to make some luxury housing on the end of it, that's fine. But too much of our development right now is going into that high end and unaffordable housing. And I think the state has a role to play here. It's a crisis. We need to build more houses quickly, and we have to think about multi-unit housing. We have to think about smaller homes for starter purchasers, and I think we need to incentivize the process by which first-time buyers can access the housing market. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you. We're going to brush back to the school topic again.
Oh, okay, great.
Our PA Constitution requires the state to provide 50% of the money needed to run our schools. And while the state has increased school funding in the past 2 budgets, it is still way below 50%. This shifts the burden to local property taxes. How would you address this taxing issue?
Yes, so as you mentioned, it's really important that we fund our schools fully and fairly as required by the state constitution. And I feel like we had that solution last month 2 months ago in July. It didn't come in its full form, so we're still working on it. And I think the main thing that we want to connect is that when the state doesn't do its job in the Department of Education budget, when legislators and extremists get in there and muck around and play politics with our children's education, the burden falls on our local school districts, and it's fundamentally unfair. Not only do they have to figure out how to fund their next year's budget, but they have to guess because legislators often drag their feet and don't approve the education budget in advance. So a big thing for me is simply making sure we have a multi-year promise, such as the 7-year deal we had, such that school districts can plan and that it's fully funded so that school districts can budget accordingly. I actually think we can cut property taxes, cut school taxes, if we are sensible about planning for our public school investments.
When an assault weapon or large capacity magazine is used in a public mass shooting, nearly 14 times as many people are injured and twice as many people are killed. Mm-hmm. Our neighboring states, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland, all have assault weapon bans. Do you support an assault weapons ban for Pennsylvania? And tell us why or why not.
Sure, I do support a ban on assault weapons, but I'd like to clarify that. As a responsible gun owner myself, I can say that the folks that I interact with around firearms are very responsible people by and large. But these firearms have various capabilities. And I would be the first to agree that so-called assault rifles or assault weapons simply a catch-all term for a whole bunch of weapons that are of military capability. And I think that's how I think about it. And I don't think civilians need military weapons. You might need some sort of hunting rifle. You might need a handgun for some purpose. I think we want to preserve our right to access some firearms, but they have to be carefully kept. They have to be carefully restricted from reaching the wrong people. And I'd love to say more about that, but I do support a ban on the retail and easy access to assault rifles.
Well, Trex, we're going to ask you to say more about that.
Oh, good. All right. So let's.
So, Pennsylvania doesn't require secure weapon storage. And should we have a law requiring secure storage of weapons? Should parents who have not secured their weapons be held accountable for crimes committed by their children?
Right. I think, certainly the accountability issue needs to be thought through a little bit more. But yes, safe storage is absolutely essential for any responsible gun owner. So here's the problem I've observed when I talk to my friends or actually go see their guns in their house. A lot of folks in our state can easily access weapons of all types, and firearms are not often locked up. They're not often secured properly. And I feel like that's a minimum requirement for owning a firearm. You have to be able to lock your firearm up and keep it away from not just children, but anyone. Suicide is a common use of firearms, and 3 out of 5 of the suicide deaths in Pennsylvania happen with a firearm. So we could do a huge amount to secure our firearms better, require owners to pass through reasonable requirements, and make sure that those guns are stored properly.
The bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022 provides $50 million in federal grants to states with red flag warning laws. These laws allow a court to determine if a violent person may own a gun. Such laws are often used in cases of domestic abuse. Should Pennsylvania have such a law?
Absolutely. There's no question in my mind that we need to keep firearms out of the wrong hands. And the wrong hands is a broad group of people, people who will harm themselves or others, people who have a history of violence, people who have existing court orders restraining them in some manner. And I feel like folks who are experiencing mental health distress. I lost a friend to a firearm suicide, and he was able to purchase his gun at the corner store, literally a corner firearms store. And just thinking about what could have prevented these deaths, quite often waiting is a really good solution. If you can prevent someone from accessing a firearm as quickly as they would like, every responsible firearm owner I know supports waiting. That would be a fine thing. There's no one who's going to be in a rush to get a gun unless they're in a desperate situation. So I do think the red flag laws are absolutely required here.
Thank you. Berks County is 50% agricultural. We know growing seasons have changed. Pennsylvania has been spared the massive destruction of the wildflowers we see around the country, but we have floods, we have drought, and we have had destructive storms. Should Pennsylvania do more to protect our economy by doing more to prevent or mitigate climate change? What actions do you think the legislator should or should not take?
That's a great question. I have been endorsed, of course, by the Climate Cabinet and Clean Air Action, and we're witnessing around our area right now the impacts of climate shifts. We may experience a really reduced corn harvest. Dairy farmers are nervous at reduced yields. So this is an issue that's really near and dear to our hearts, because not only do we depend on agriculture, but we also in our area depend on the tourism that comes with it. It's billions and billions of dollars in revenue for our economies. So I think it's really important to emphasize that climate change is happening. It's a real problem. It doesn't affect every area in quite the same way. So what we need to do is put front and center climate science when we make agricultural investment decisions. And I think there's a lot of farmers who are interested in this now that weren't 20 years ago because they've seen the results firsthand. So I would say to the agricultural sector, we want to be with you, and we're going to take seriously the impacts on your livelihood of these climate changes. So let's look at it with clear eyes and a basis in science, and do all we can at the state level to invest in our farming communities. Let's
talk about fuel, fossil and sustainable. Should our laws and budget support one more than the other or both equally? Should state regulation require the same state safety standards in both? Tell us a little bit about your thinking on this.
Sure. I'm concerned that Pennsylvania hasn't been getting a fair deal from the extraction industries, particularly the petroleum-related extraction industries, over the many, many decades. After all, we were the place where they discovered oil here in North America for use in automobiles. So, we have a long history with the petroleum industry, and I think it's been productive as far as it went before we knew the negative impacts and the need to shift to a new, greener economy. So, for me anyway, I see that shift as normal. As a business professor, I used to talk about case studies in which companies were able to see changes coming and then adapt and plan accordingly. So that's what we need to do with the shift to renewables. But it's going to be jarring. So a big part of what the state government can do, certainly with federal assistance and with regional collaboration, is we can invest in those workers and in those technologies in a way that makes the transition as seamless and as smooth as possible. We still make bad deals when it comes to petroleum, and I'd like the state to do better. Too often it's easy for big money in politics to sway how the budget looks and which companies are being rewarded, and I would like to end the role of those lobbyists and big money contributors.
Most Pennsylvania House and Senate seats are won in the spring primary election when Democrats and Republicans choose their candidates. One reason is gerrymandering, creating voting districts where one party always wins. After each U.S. Census, House and Senate leaders behind closed doors draw new voting districts, often rewarding friends, making it harder for enemies. House Bill 1776 and Senate Bill 1076 would amend our Constitution so a transparent, independent citizen commission draws the lines. States with this system say that candidates from major parties are more moderate and better able to work together. Would you vote to create an independent citizen commission to draw legislative lines after the next consensus?
Yes, absolutely. If I'm in office, for sure. You got to get me there first. But State Senate District 13 looks a little odd. It was redistricted 2 years ago, and it does make my incumbent that I'm challenging safer. There are more clearly voters in his party than mine. So a big part of what I would argue is that we need fair districts. We need an independent redistricting committee, and we need to mandate that as part of the structural apparatus of our state. So I'm very much in favor of that, and I would be willing to live with the possible consequence that my own seat in the future would be a little more vulnerable to challenge, because I think that's what every elected official should be willing to face. I think it's too bad that this isn't, it is a bipartisan concern, but it's also been implemented in a bipartisan way. And I really think one thing I can do is commit to term limits, so I'll only serve 2 terms in this office, so I won't be tempted to try to feather my nest. And also, I think we've got to get, as I said, the big money out of politics that's leading folks to stay in office way too long. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. Well, the second reason seats are won in the primary is closed primaries. Pennsylvania is one of 9 states where one must be registered as a Democrat or a Republican to vote in the primary. This leaves out 1.2 million voters in Pennsylvania. Should Pennsylvania change how we run our primary election? Where do you stand on that?
Yes, I think I've heard this concern many times. I feel like this is an issue where I'm willing to be open-minded about it, but my inclination is that it's okay if parties want to run a contest of some sort that then helps them decide their candidate for a given race. I also think they could do that before the primary itself, and so the primary should be open by inclination, in my view. But I would say this is an example of an issue where I didn't actually have to run a primary against anyone else. I got close to 1,800 write-in votes because nobody was running. So whatever process gets us the best candidates, that's the one I'm going to be in favor of, and I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through. That was so much fun, but also very nail-biting and nerve-wracking. So, so I'm in favor of the open primary concept. Interested to hear others' views.
So we have about 40 seconds left.
Wow.
Would you like to make a closing statement?
Okay, sure. So a big reason I'm running is that I think PA can do better, and we deserve better from our elected officials. I feel like what happens in Harrisburg, and I've seen it up close and personal, is that folks get complacent. They end up falling into easy party line kind of trajectories, especially as they've been elected, reelected. As someone who's not a career politician, this is my first run for office, I feel like I can bring a new energy and a new perspective to not only Harrisburg, representing the 13th district, but also working on behalf of all of Pennsylvanians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Proffitt, for sharing your views with us today.
Thank you, Sue.
Viewers, please remember there is another candidate for the 13th Senate District, Scott Martin. Mr. Martin has not scheduled an interview when we taped this one. To check your voting status, go to vote.pa.gov. You can register, change your party, locate your polling place, or apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot. The deadline to register is October 21st. The deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is October 29th. Then check the League's online voter guide, vote411.org. There you can confirm your voting district and get more information on the candidates. Or contact Berks County Election Services. Their email is elections@countyofberks.com. Phone number is 610-478-6490. Thank you for watching Candidates Up Front. I'm Sue Ruth. Good day.